when I was young, me, my brother, and one of our friends was basically the equivalent of Dumb, Dumb, and Dumber. I mean, we were the three people who you basically didn't want to really take anywhere. Not because like we were bad kids, but more so because we would just do things out of curiosity, right? We would wander off into the woods. We would, mess with like plants that we probably shouldn't be messing with. Like stuff that's a little poisonous. Like there's a lot of things that we would do, and it was just always a fun time, but it was very, very interesting too, because there's so many stories. But the one we're going to be talking about today is when we got lost. So when we were about, I think I was about 10 years old at the time, meaning my brother was about 14 and our friend was about 14. And basically, we were at this friend's house all of the time. And it was pretty chill most of the time. We'd basically go over, his grandma would make brownies, we'd eat like pasta. It was a good time. We'd play Yu-Gi-Oh! And we didn't have television. That's a big part of this story, is we didn't have TV, we didn't have any devices. The most we had was like we all had like the original Nintendo DS's basically. Like the box ones that you could flip up. All three of us had those, but that was the extent of what we could really do inside, because everything else his grandma didn't own, and that's where he spent most of his time. And one weekend, his grandma invited us out to this kind of family outing to basically go to Kentucky with them to the Mammoth. What's it called? What's it called? It's called like Mammoth Cave National Park. That's what it is. And Mammoth Cave National Park, if you're not sure what it is basically just this massive, massive park that is just forest, waterfalls, and caves, and that is it. Like, and it's very rocky, very hilly. There's a little bit. It's not mountainy, but it's like there's cliffs basically, and it's pretty dangerous out there. And she invited us to go there with him and his uncle, and then obviously like his parents and everything. And his uncle at that time was basically like the cool uncle, right? Like we didn't have much family, me and my brother growing up, so it was cool hanging out with him because it was like we got an uncle, we had like a grandma, and then we had a good friend or like a brother essentially. And we would do things like this all the time. So this was pretty normal. Like we would go to Kentucky, we'd go to Ohio, we'd go on like adventures basically with their family. It was pretty common, and our dad trusted us with them like completely. But in this in particular time, we all three of us, like I said, it was dumb, dumb, and dumber. We were at the ripe age of our brains weren't really developed, and we just wanted to test the limits of what we could and couldn't do, essentially. And his uncle was essentially like the chaperone, but his uncle was also kind of similar to us in that way. So we would go to Kentucky Mammoth Cave National Park. I'm not gonna say the entire thing. I'm just gonna abbreviate it to Mammoth. But we would go there and we went swimming for the day. Right, we were only gonna be there for like the weekend, but we went swimming for the day. If you don't know about it, you basically there's a massive creek there that has these gigantic waterfalls. Everybody goes swimming there, and it's usually just like a fun time. Essentially, you're just trying to make sure you don't slip on rocks, but besides that, there's thousands of other people that go there. Not like weekly, but there's so many people. So we're hanging out. It's also a good time. We're chilling. I think we had like a little bit of a barbecue like by the water, and um it was a good time. And then it came to a point where eventually we kind of ended up going back to the local cabin that we were staying at, because there's a bunch of cabins out there for people to camp at or stay at for the night. And basically, we're like, you know what? There's like 4 or 5 hours left until nighttime. And me, my brother, and our friend and his uncle were like, there's no way we're going to sleep, Like, just logically, we know his grandma would probably go to sleep at like 8 or 9 o'clock. But realistically, young people, you're just not really going to do that, especially on vacation. At least for me, like, I always had slight anxiety going on vacation as it was. There was no way I was going to go to sleep at that time. So instead, we decided to go on a hike. And basically, the entire national park of Mammoth is marked with these these symbols on trees. They paint over them every single year so that way they can keep up with making sure people don't get lost. And we walk around this park for probably 2 or 3 hours, and after about 2 or 3 hours, it starts getting dark. I mean, it's getting dark quick, and we're kind of in almost a divot in a bowl, and because we're in this divot, the sun's going down faster than we expected. So we kind of start panicking a little bit. We're like, oh, we should probably make it our way back home and start following our markers back. Yeah, it turns out the markers were placed in the most weird positions ever. Like, I mean, whoever put the markers in that forest has to be drunk while doing it. Because one time will be like, all right, you're gonna go left, and then the next tree will say you're gonna go left, and then the next tree will say you're gonna go left, and then the next tree is gonna say you're gonna go right, and then you'll go left 6 more times, and you're like, dude, I'm pretty sure I just went in a circle for 4 hours. And this is every single tree in the forest, by the way. Like almost every single tree along the path and everything has this kind of set up in this way. And so eventually, we are lost. Like we have no clue where we are, and it is pretty dark at this point. Like I'd say, like the sun is like just about to set. We have no clue where we are, and we're just kind of using our basic survival skills, which is absolutely nothing besides like sheer willpower essentially. And we proceeded to, yeah, keep on trekking. We were hoping that the arrows would take us home eventually, if at all, essentially. And we're trekking in. After about another hour or two, it is now pitch black of us just like walking through the woods. And I remember this part so distinctly. We like get trapped, and like all of us are kind of huddled together, not for warmth or anything. We're huddled together to like figure out what should we do next, because we don't have cell phones. I didn't get a cell phone until I was like 15 years old. My brother doesn't have a cell phone. Our friend doesn't have a cell phone, and the only person who has a cell phone is the uncle. And I'm pretty sure his phone was at like when you're in the park, you're at 0 bars. Like I'm just straight up, you are at 0 bars. You are not getting connection to anything. There's no cell towers nearby. There's nothing. So he's at 0 bars, and he's at like 30% battery, if I remember correctly. And he's like, okay, well, I'm only going to use this for an emergency, because that's what you have to do when you're in a survival situation with a phone. You have to preserve the battery. So we're not using it as a flashlight. We're not using it as like spam call. We're literally trying to find our way through the woods, hoping that maybe we can get to a higher point that could bounce off of some sort of cell tower at some point in time. So like we're walking, and there's no moonlight on this night, by the way. It was cloudy, like pitch black. And we're walking through the woods. We're walking through the woods, and I see off in the distance, I see a light pass by like real quick, and I'm like, and I have to like stop everybody. I'm like, we gotta head that way. That's the only way I've seen a light. So let's head that way because it's the most logical thing. And we start heading that way, and luckily enough, this actually puts us kind of at the it makes us start ascending upward. But the hill that we need to ascend upward is the muddiest hill I have ever been on in my entire life. I mean, thick enough mud, like this deep, where you put your foot in and you lose your shoe almost immediately. So we're walking up this hill, and luckily enough, my shoes. I've always liked my shoes being really tight on my feet, so I don't lose my shoes. But they are covered in mud. But my brother was wearing kind of like loose fitting shoes, and he actually lost both of his shoes in the mud. This is still, by the way, pitch black, nothing around. We have no clue where we are. He loses both of his shoes in the mud, and we can't turn back for him because basically the option is, okay, are we going to go search in the dark and waste a bunch of energy for these shoes, or are we going to uh, just keep trekking, right? So we decided to keep trekking, and basically our friend's uncle decided to just carry my brother at this point because he was like, okay, this is the most logical thing. like we have to keep moving. We can't just sit in this mud pool. And we keep moving, we keep moving, we keep moving, and eventually we come to this top of the hill, right? Kind of this peak, kind of like this, and it comes out to a clearing almost where we can finally see. This is the first time in probably 6 hours that we've been able to see, and we can see like clearly over like the entire park almost because we finally made it to the top of this hill, and it was still pretty hard to see like in general, but it was good enough. It's good enough to where you're not like, dude, where am I? What is this thing in front of me? You're not like trying to be a mime inside of a box or something like that. And we see, fortunately enough, we see like one of the singular roads in the distance that kind of wraps around this massive cliff that leads to basically our campsite. But it's far. Like when I say it's far, it's probably like 6 or so miles away, is like how far it is. And we decide kind of in that moment that we're going to stop and rest because at this point, like I said, we've been trekking for a long time. So we decided to stop and rest. And uh, I just straight up, I remember like as a kid, for me being in the woods like this, it was like a little petrifying, but it wasn't scary to me because I have always and still kind of do have kind of a slight ego when it comes to a survival instinct. I think most people do. Like, if you aren't panicking or something like that and you don't feel that fear or that panic, you don't really think, like, okay, my main priority needs to be to get to this road right now. It's like, no, my main priority needs to be to survive, right? So I was like, we should just stay here for the night, Like, we should just, like, rest up, take a nap, and wake up in the morning and like try to find our way back, essentially. And what ended up happening, actually, like over the course of this time, was we ended up resting for a slight bit, and it was such like it was so eerie, like the entire time we were resting, because like we were not really talking that much. We're all kind of exhausted, and the forest is quiet. When I say quiet, I mean no birds chirping, no crickets, no nothing. It's like silent, like more silent than you would ever like to be around. And this is where I kind of start panicking a little bit because I also, if you guys don't know me too well, I also am a little bit of a conspiracy theorist when it comes to silence in the woods is like a bad omen or bad juju. And this is kind of like my heart starts racing a little bit. And at this time, like I believe we got probably the luckiest send ever, essentially, where apparently a search helicopter just happened to see us like on on like heat sink basically, or like whatever it's called, like the thing where they can like on like thermal vision. They like barely saw us on top of this hill, and they sent out a rescue team, and eventually basically like was able to lead our path back to this road very easily. And all this happened in a very short amount of time, by the way. Like from the point where we're resting, like it happened like that almost, at least from my memory of it. Of course, there's probably a lot of things I don't remember because it was a long time ago, but from my memory, it was like that. And we made our way back to the road, got in a car, and yeah, all four of us got chewed out by his grandma like nonstop. Like they had a search team. They had like because they genuinely thought like we were gone, like we were gone because I mean that's what you think when you have basically four young adults essentially venture off. Well, four young adults and the or three young adults and then a kid essentially venture off into the woods and disappear into the darkness and don't call, don't show up, don't do anything. So they had a full search team. They called the cops. Like everything was out there looking for us, and like it was just a crazy experience because I remember like when it was all said and done, I was like, well, that was fun. Like that is an interesting experience. I can genuinely say that compared to a lot of people that I've met in my life, that is one of one experience for probably 99.9% of the entire world's population. But it was just something like, man, I don't know. Maybe I do have like a little bit of like mental trauma from when I'm a kid, Not to say, but it was also one of those things that like I look back at now, I'm like, that was a crazy, crazy, crazy experience to have when you're 10 years old. To like thinking about it, right, is like basically I almost lost my life in exchange to go on a hike because I didn't want to sleep in time. Like that's nuts to think about. Um, but yeah, that's what happened. It was an interesting time. Thank you guys so much for watching my story. Uh, I don't know. Let me know if something like this ever happened to you guys. Like I said, like to me, it's just a story, right? Like I don't have any thoughts in the back of my head that are like, oh wow, it really, really sucks this happened. Like, was it a course of unfortunate events, and could it be 10 times worse? 100%. But for me, it's just a story now. Like it's just lore of my life, essentially. If you guys like this one though, I might do a little bit more story times about the trio of Dumb Dumb and Dumber, because I mean, we did have a lot of times like that, and it was always just interesting. But looking back at it now, it's like it's just stories from when I was a kid that don't really. I mean, I think they probably shaped who I am today, but they don't really add. I guess like trauma to my life, at least none that I know of. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful night. Peace.